So I'm going to be talking about a rather controversial topic today, the minimum wage. You've probably heard one of two solutions for this problem, which is one, increasing it, or two, doing nothing to it at all, leaving it the same. Well, I'm here to bring you a third option, and I'm hoping that I could convince you about this option because I think it's very important. And my option might startle you at first, but it is to abolish the minimum wage completely, $0.00. So let's get right into it. What the proponents of the minimum wage say, or tend to say, is that it should be $15. It's a human rights issue about human decency. There's been rallies all over America about this, and then even some politicians are getting into it. Senator Bernie Sanders from my home state of Vermont, on the campaign trail, he's a Democrat, said this quote, which is, "The federal minimum wage today of $7.25 an hour must be regarded as a starvation wage. It must be raised to a living wage of $15 an hour over the next few years. A worker who works 40 hours a week in America should not be living in poverty. That's not extreme. That's common decency." So how does one refute this? That seems like a pretty black and white thing. It's about human decency. People are starving. This is inhumane not to have a minimum wage made higher. Well, I'd like to refute what Bernie Sanders says with another policy of his, and in fact another quote of his, which is about the tax on carbon. I'll get to how this correlates later. He says, "I am proud that we introduced the first piece of climate change legislation which called for a tax on carbon." So if we look at the premise of the carbon tax, it shows that we have a certain price for gas. So the price per gallon this weekend was $2.32. Bernie Sanders says that the consumer is happy with this. He's perfectly fine with this, willing to pay that much. But if we were to add a tax to it of $1, that would be too much for the consumer. They'd not be happy with that, and therefore they go away. And so there's a certain threshold that people are willing to pay before they will just not buy something at all. The same theory applies to the cigarette tax and many other taxations, which when you're trying to dissuade people from doing something. So let's apply this to the minimum wage. Let's say we have a minimum wage worker right now making $7.25 an hour, the current minimum wage. If we were to use Bernie's legislation for $15 an hour, adding, well, the Monopoly Man's happy with it right now. If we were to add Bernie's $7.75 extra to make it $15, that would be in effect a tax because the Monopoly Man would now have to pay above his threshold of what he's willing to pay, and therefore will not hire you or fire you in the first place. So Bernie's idea of turning people from rags to riches because with a minimum wage, making people with low paid minimum wage the higher minimum wages doesn't actually work out because they are either fired or don't get the job in the first place. And that makes sense because if Cam were to make $5 an hour, if he was worth $5 an hour to a company and the government came in and said, you have to pay him $7, that company would be wasting $2 an hour to keep him aboard. And so that it would make no sense. Why would they do that? And so in reality, unemployment happens. A lot of people think this is an unintended consequence, but if we look at some of the early minimum wage laws in the world, and Walter E. Williams references this in his article called "Mandated Wages and Discrimination." He talks about an example. I'll have some more real-life examples after this, but in theory, he says that if you were to have a 100-foot of fence and you needed someone to do it, you had two options: three people for $15 each, which is $45, or you could have one person for $40. So clearly, you pick the $40 person to begin with because it's cheaper. But let's say that person gets too big for his britches and says that it needs to be $50. I deserve $50. This is what I need to get. So you say, go home. I have 3 other guys who will do the exact same job, same amount of time, and they're cheaper. You say, get out of here, and these guys take over. So what does the other guy who got kicked out of the job do? Well, he starts to go on the road as a politician and says, you know what? We need people to be paid $20 an hour. $15 is inhumane. People can't. It's a starvation wage. They can't afford this. The people buy it. There's a bill passed, and then all of a sudden, our guys over here who are worth $15 an hour are now worth $20 or have to be paid $20 an hour, which leads to a grand total of $60 an hour. So all of a sudden, if you're trying to pay for fence, $60 an hour seems like way too much opposed to the guy who's $50 an hour. So if we think about this in terms of racism, Walter E. Williams, who's a black economist, said that, quote, the minimum wage not only discriminates against low-skilled workers, but also is one of the most effective tools of racists everywhere. And another economist, Paul Samuelson, who's a Nobel Prize winner, said in his economics textbook, what good does it do a black youth to know that an employer must pay him a minimum wage, and the fact that he must be paid that wage keeps him from getting a job? So why does this make any sense? Well, if we look at the Davis-Bacon Act, which was one of the nation's first minimum wage laws, it was for federal contracting jobs. And many senators got together and said, you know what, this is after like civil rights acts were coming through, and so black people were just starting to get jobs. And they were being hired at higher rates because they had lower skill to begin with. And so they were cheaper, and so they were hiring a ton of lower skilled black people as opposed to one, per se, white person. And so a bunch of senators got together and said, we should pass this law so that we can outprice them, and so we can only hire white, high-skilled people. A more blatant example is with the South African apartheid, when the head of the South African Building Workers Union, which has later been exposed as a racist union, said that there's no job reservation left in the building industry, and in the circumstances, I support the rate for the job minimum wage as the second best way of protecting our white artisans. So as we can see, there's been examples all throughout history of people using the minimum wage as a racist tool. And if we see this today with what the minimum wage does, if we look at all white, Hispanic, and Asian races, they are nearly getting to 30% for unemployment, which is relatively good, but blacks are pushing 40% in the teen age thing. So why is this? It's because black people usually have a higher rate of public school system education, and especially in inner cities, which leads to lower skill if they're getting a phony inner city education. And then some various other government and social injustices also lead to them being lower skilled to begin with, so that it's harder for them to get a job whenever there's a threshold. So why $0 as opposed to say $5 or $8? How are we going to prevent someone from being paid nothing, from having a company exploit someone so that they get zero? Well, let's run through this example here. Let's say that you're worth $8 and you're currently getting exploited by the businessman over there, and he's paying you $4. He's making $4 off of you. So one of two things could happen. One, another guy comes in and he's starting to ask you about job prospects. This guy says, okay, I need to give him a wage increase because he's going to leave me and I won't be able to make $4 off of him anymore. If your employer isn't smart enough to pick up on that, this guy will be willing to pay you more because he'll know he'll be able to entice you into your company, and he's trying to make money off of you too, which a $2 profit is better than no profit at all. So in effect, you'd actually be getting paid more, closer to what you're worth. The second reason it should be $0 is for people like Bad Luck Brian here, can't find a job. So let's say you're worth 25 cents. If you have a minimum wage of $7, there's no way in heck that you're going to be getting a job. So we need to have a $0 minimum wage, so people who are worth, let's say, 25 cents, who are that low skilled, can get a foot on the economic ladder and can work their way up to a better job. And there's a statistic by the Heritage Foundation did research, and they showed that 2/3 of minimum wage workers get a raise within a year. So they get into better jobs. So if we're cutting people off, they're not getting employed in the first place, they're not getting jobs later down the line because they tend not to get the skills required to get those sort of jobs. So if we have low-skilled workers get a job very early on, they could work their way up the economic ladder, and I think that would be better for prosperity. So what can you do? Well, there's two things you could do. You could, one, if you're an American citizen here, you could call your senator. You could go to www.senate.gov senators/contact, and contact your representative and say, don't vote for any $15 minimum wage increases, none of that. Or you can sign this petition at change.org to the President of the United States saying, do not raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think this issue is important because, as I showed, people cannot get a job early on, and then therefore they're not able to work their way in the economic system, and they're not able to work their way to a better job, and then it leads to this perpetual cycle of unemployment, high unemployment rates, and people are getting paid $0 as opposed to the ideal $7.25. So the real humanitarian thing to do would be to abolish the minimum wage. Thank you.